Good Voch Rabboisai Lilu Nishmasimi Merosi Rusbas Mordechai. Sponsored by our very good friend Yossi Klein from Superior Piping and Plumbing in Monsey, New York. Thank you for all you do for Klal Yisrael. Is that what it says? Yes. Balpeh. This is email he sent me on November 25th. Where were we? In January 25th came out. Okay. Hi, Rebelli. I want to please, you know what? This is written in English. I happen to speak English. I will do all the translation for the Olam. Hi, Rebelli. I want to please to the Olam to copy me for the next month to get the sponsors. Adam Mishbucha, Ami, Pina, de Blat, etc. Could be for the Lili Nishmas, etc. I know a lot of people like me are in pain to publish the name. It rhymes. So it's not in English, it's in English. They don't need a boost on their self-esteem, but remember it's a big schis. Bekitzer, I think what he's saying is, not sure. Okay, thanks again for the shir, and don't forget, your shir is not a sleeping pill, only a stress relief pill. Laughing out loud. And thanks to Gary. You hear this? Gary, this is for you. I know it's not easy on what you're doing, especially when we're not getting paid for it, when you're not getting paid for it. Keep it up. What do you mean he's not getting paid? Of course he gets paid for it. Every once in a while I give him a chocolate or something. Keep it up. Also, some newcomers might want to hear the main email address. Thanks, Yossi. Rabbi Yisai, we have a lot of emails. We're going to go through all of them. Okay, Menachem Ateh. Here we go. From Philip Sanzer. Hi, Eli. I need to recover from today's daf. You're genuinely caring for this boy you haven't met. I was crying along with you. Thank you for teaching me how to be noisy. Chaver Ephraim. For your information, Yoeli and Mati Elkan are my wife's cousins. Their sister Shalom and her husband are amazing people and truly inspired my wife. Yeah, I have to hear what that might say. Remember, we had a turning of the daf. Lilian and Shmooze. I wonder what the story is. Yitzchak Blach from Baltimore. Thank you for all you do, providing so many of us who want to learn in the daf with a full share and the Ibn Chazor more. May you continue to teach us. May we continue to learn from you for many years, many cycles together. Okay. And he asked here if there's any. He said that somebody in Shul said there's only a collection of items, and someone in Shul wanted to suggest this deeper level here corresponding to the four gulas. Bavel, Modai, Edom, Mitzrayim, the Kutach, the Sheikhar, Modai, and so I remember going back, looking at the back of the Masifta, one of the Achronim says that's where he got it from. John Gruen, know that this is old. Oleander is poisonous. We got 3 or 4 emails that we were talking about oleander, and I showed it as part of the thing. It's poisonous. Rabbi Yisai, if you haven't tried it out since we learned it back then, on December 30th, just don't try it out now. It's poisonous. Hopefully no one will be foolish enough to use it. Baruch Hashem, doing much better, waiting for the pandemic to cool down, and we'll have a student say, Yossi Sounders. Am I the only one who says automatic amen every time you say shahakol, even though it's on YouTube? Hours after you have given the live share? Yossi Sounders. You know Yossi Sounders? He's from England. You do know him. Jonathan Stern, January 9th. Dear Eli Stefansky, I'm going to go. We got 4,000 emails this year. I'm going to go through all of them. The ones that are in the Negel Amais. Dear Eli Stefansky, according to the Balatanya, we use onions for carpets and recite the Dama, cook the Shahakol. But best wishes of good health and happiness and spreading a deeper understanding of Daf Yomi worldwide. Jonathan Stern, London, UK. Yitzchak Sherman, Shalom and thank you. Kvaiter Rav, I try to do the daf 3 times each day. Your shir is an amazing chazara. If only you could be one day ahead, it could serve as you pretended to be. Also, perhaps in the sugis, please try. I hope he's talking about the 8-minute daf. He wants me to be. He doesn't want me to be a day ahead on the actual daf. The 8-minute, yeah, that has to be a day ahead. But I don't know if that will ever happen. It's a block in the head. Thanks again for so clearly and cleverly presenting the blot. Yankel Berkovitz, Brooklyn, New York. And don't worry about it. We're not. That's it. Last one for tonight. Danny Gilbert. He sent me a bunch of them. This is from December 29th. Wow. The reason to talk about your many, many unique stories and the subsequent MDY hack about whether all story details are factually accurate or not, of course they all are. It reminded me of the following mice, the famous mice, but it's kedai to repeat it once in a while. And I'll say the mice the way I heard it. He said it from Yankel Galinsky in the name of Reb Shalom Shvadron. It's true. Reb Shalom Shvadron once asked the Chazon Ish, are you allowed to lie in a story in order to be mekarev people? When you're doing kiruv, lie in the story, and the Chazon Ish says 100% you could lie, says Reb Shalom Shvadron, and that's the first lie. He's never said the mice. Okay, so What is he saying? Oh, he's saying that I'm making up stories in order to be Mechazik Klal Yisrael. That's what he's trying to say here. Danny Gilbert from Boca Raton, Florida. He also wanted to know, Danny, why is it that because we're wearing a mask, we're not kissing the Sefer Torah? It's a big chiyuv to kiss and this and that. And it reminds me that our Rav in Chicago, he said that Country Yossi once had a song. That it's so funny that people kiss the bubby and they don't kiss the mezuzah. And Rabbi Twersky, he got up and he said the song is shtusim. You're supposed to, it's a mitzvah to kiss your bubby because kibbud avayim. And it's not a mitzvah to kiss a mezuzah. Where does it say we have to kiss a mezuzah? So anyways, so Danny from Boca Raton probably wouldn't like that very much, but maybe kissing Sefer Torah is, okay, fine. But he tightens, you should, if that was your minhag, the Vilna Gaon says not to kiss your tzitzis during Shema, and he was all upset that people are not kissing because they're wearing a mask. All right. Zok Teheli Gemara, we are on Daf Samech Gimel. And we are holding 8 lines from the bottom.
It's really nice.
It is? It's nice.
Very nice.
Okay. Whatever. But we're in the middle of a shir now.
Oh, I'm talking to myself.
I know, and sometimes when you talk to yourself, it's very loud and the olam hears you. But whatever, it's fine. Gary was just talking to himself, and he was saying how beautiful the lights in the Beis Medrash are. My wife picked out lights finally, and some of them are up, some of them aren't. We'll show you a picture later on. Omer Rav Bar Yuda, Omer Rav. Omar Rami Bar Rav Yuda, Omer Rav. Miyoim Shenigna Sefer Yuchsin. So remember, we were discussing yesterday the Sefer Yuchsin. There's Divrei Hayomim, it's part of Ksuvim, and then the Sefer Yuchsin, the Tanoim gave drushes on Divrei Hayomim, and it was Nignaz. Now, Reb Chaim Kanievsky always says that Tchelis is Nignaz. The Medrash says Nignaz, and therefore one should not wear Tchelis B'zman Hazeh. Although the place that he quotes that it was Nignaz is hundreds of years before. I mean, Klal Yisrael was wearing Tchelis for many hundreds of years later. Big Shiloh Reb Chaim Kanievsky, fine. Reb Chaim Kanievsky himself says that if you believe in Tchelis, and Mamish you believe, you should wear Tchelis. Fine. Lo Mashana. That's Reb Chaim Kanievsky. Rashi over here says on Nignaz, the word Nignaz, he says Nishtakach. Doesn't say it was buried, it's gone, it's all Nishtakach. So Miyoim Shenignaz Sefer Yuchsin, from that day that it was Nishtakach, it was forgotten. Toshash Koichen Shel Chachamim. Chachamim lost part of their power, they became weaker. Why? Because there's so many explanations of Torah in the Sefer, and that's it. It was lost. Does it mean that it was buried on purpose? I don't know. And their eyesight got weaker. In other words, they lost the ability to say the same beautiful pshatim that they used to. Omar Zutra, Bein Otzel La'otzal. So in Perek Ches, the last pasuk in Perek Ches, and the last Perek in Perek Tes, in other words, a full Perek of Divrei Hayomim, Bein Otzel La'otzal, Teinu Arba Meo Gamli de Drosha. They had 400 loads of drushes on Divrei Hayomim, and it got lost. And of course, once again, here we go. I started taking count, and then I gave up somewhere in the middle of Shas. Of all the many times that it says in Shas, 400 and 300, and it's everybody. It's not me saying. The G'daylim say that it's an exaggeration. Usually, 400 is most likely an exaggeration. The point is that there was many drushes on Divrei Hayomim, and it got lost. And the Gemara says, since it got lost, the Chachamim lost some of their ability to give over Torah to understand other places as well. Tanya. We learned that if you have a mixture of people, you have some that don't have a bris milah, some that do have a bris milah, and you think in your mind that you're shechting the Korban Pesach for both of the types of people, it's kosher. Says the Gemara, provided that you started out with the kosher people, the ones that have a bris milah, and then you thought about the ones that don't have a bris milah. But if it's the reverse, you started thinking, okay, I'm shechting this Korban Pesach for the people that don't have a bris milah, and then you switch the people that have a bris milah, apostle. Ask the Gemara, the kosher, the kula arla b'yinam veleka, as we learned the other day, that in order to passel the Korban Pesach, it has to be the entire group are a bunch of uncircumcised people, they're a bunch of arelim. But if you have some of them that are mahul, then it's kosher. So what's the difference where you started? Even if you started out with the people that don't have a bris, and then you went to the people that have a bris, it's not a problem. Top of Samach Gimel Amud Aleph. Leimel kosavri acherim. Who's acherim? Reb Meir usually. As the Gemara is going to say specifically that Reb Meir. Rabbi Yisai, today we're learning a bunch of new concepts that we didn't have yet from the beginning of Shas. Once again, it's heavy kachim, and we are going into very, very easy sugyas. 3-4 days is just gadata and easy stuff. Today's not a difficult day. When a person shechts, we have a machlokes in kachim. When a person shechts, is it a whole long process that takes 10 seconds? He starts to cut and he goes and he goes and he continues and he goes back and forth, and therefore whatever he thinks during those 10 seconds is chal or basoif. The first cut that he does and he goes, let's say, through the trachea and he gets to the esophagus, that's nothing. As he finishes it, that's it. That's the shechita. How long did that take? A millisecond. How much could you think during that 1 millisecond? One thought. That's it. There's no time in that millisecond for two thoughts. Memela over here, if you hold ein el shechita el basoif, the whole shechita takes part all the way at the end to end. So I could only throw in one machshava. Which machshava do I throw in? The first one. So memela, the first one was for arelim, pasul. First one was for mulim, kosher. Ein el shechita el basoif ukiderava. Okay, the Gemara says there 4 words. There's a massive Rashi. I saw in the art scroll probably one of the longest notes in the art scroll history. It spans 2 pages, this Rashi. But the bottom line is, we'll make it very, very short and easy. This is what we had a few days ago. If a person has in front of him, so I'll just show you this, and then we'll go to the improved version of this. It has some sheep in it. Harezu tmuras oila tmuras shlamim. That's what a guy says. He says 2 things in 1 sentence. Now, here is a picture. If I could get to it. Here we go. He has 2 skinny sheep. One of them is a shlamim, one of them is a oila. And he finds in his barn a nice, fat, gezunta sheep. He was picking his nose, but that's a different story. And he says, this fat sheep should be instead of these skinny guys. You would think he's doing a very nice thing. He's trying to get rid of the skinny guys, and put in a fat guy. Now, if he just went one-on-one, this would be Issa D'Oraisa. He says, okay, this is a tmura, this is instead of this oila. What happens is, this oila remains a oila, this fat guy becomes a oila, they're both oila, and he was over in Aveira. He didn't do a good thing, he did a bad thing. Now what happens if he says the same exact thing, but he says, shlamim oila, oila shlamim. They're both guy. So, Reb Meir says, Tzfais Lashon Rishon. You got to go with what he says first. He said, oila, oila. Shlamim, shlamim. Maybe the oila should have been over here. Fine. Now, so remember the sugya tfais lashon rishon. We go by the first thing he says. What he says later, we erase. According to Rabbi Yossi, tfais lashon achrein. And tfais lashon achrein, we already explained, means we take everything into consideration. Not just achrein, everything. So he said shlamim and oila, shlamim and oila. Yirach is stav, you let it graze until it has a mum. What do you do with the money? You sell it, half goes to shlamim, half goes to oila. Fine. In Remeir. Remeir says, Tfais Lashon Rishon. Now listen to this. What the Gemara means over here, the Omar Rav Adayin Hi Machloikis, is this. I try to do it as best I can. What happens if a guy does a half of mim? Mim is shlamim, right? I chopped it in half, but maybe the shlamim should have been over here. Half of a oila. That's his thought. So the Gemara is proving now that Remeir is going with the idea of Tfais Lashon Rishon. I still go with oila, and he's a oila. End of the story. So you see from that Rava, that Remeir still sticks with Tfais Lashon Rishon, even though we don't have the same svaras when it's half. It becomes an oila, a complete oila. We don't let it become shlam according to Remeir. So, continuing on, Hilkach. Higdim mulim la'arelim. mulim chayli. So if you say first that, so again, the guy only could say, he could think about one thought in his mind. Why? Because the shechita takes a millisecond. Because the shechita is chal at the very last second, or however long a shechita takes. If a shechita takes 20 minutes, it's chal at second, whatever the last second of the 20 minutes is. And if the shechita is for 5 seconds, the 5th second. So how much could you chaper in 1 second? One thought. What's his thought? Says the Gemara. If he thought to begin with, higdim mulim la'arelim mulim chayli. So then it's a great carbon because he's had in mind for all the people that have a bris milah. Arelim le'chayli. The thought that it's for arelim doesn't exist. Higdim arelim le'mulim. But if he started out with arelim chayli, mulim le'chayli, then it's a puzzle carbon. Perhaps that's the shaila over here. And that's why the Gemara makes the distinction whether he thinks first arelim or he thinks first mulim. By the way, as we're going to see mefurish, and if I forget to say it, I'll say it now. If you look at 8 lines down from where the Rashi becomes very wide, Rashi, I might have said the opposite. Because I said there's a machlokes rishonim if you have to say it with your mouth. Over here, Rashi says mefurish. Kol machshava dekochim moiti bepivu. So Rashi is of the opinion, I think Tosfos as well. Maybe it's the Rambam, I don't remember anymore who argues with Rashi, but Rashi at least is of the opinion you must say it with your mouth. Okay. Amar Rabba, loy. That's not the pshat. Reb Meir holds perhaps Reb Meir even holds shchita begins in the beginning and ends at the end. In other words, everything in between, any machshava you insert in between the beginning and the end is chal. The machshava is a good machshava. In his mind, in his heart, he said both. Bein lemulim, bein la'arelim. V'hoitzi befiv la'arelim, v'lo hispik loy mar lemulim. But in his mouth, in his heart, he wanted for both people that had a milah and people that don't. But what was he able to say? What was he able to articulate? You like that for Panovich? Articulate. He was able to say one word. He was able to say, arelim. And he wasn't able to say for the people that had bris milah, until it was over. The Remeir savar loy be'inam piv v'liboy shavim. This is a big thing. I mean, in Yiddishkeit, you have to have your mind, whatever you have in your heart is what comes out of your mouth. You shouldn't be saying things that you don't believe in. Remeir says, at least in the Havamina right now, you don't need piv v'liboy shavim. V'rabbanan savri be'inan piv v'liboy shavim. And therefore, you said, arelim, that's it. You're stuck with arelim. In your heart, you thought to yourself, it's for mulim, too bad. All right, Tosfos goes into this whole thing. We'll see later. Because Savar Meir loy be'iram piv v'liboy shavin. What Meir that holds that you don't need it equal. Verminu amiskaven loy mar truma v'omar meiser. So it's good to see this. I was just talking to somebody on the phone, a big tzaddik who's helping me out a lot, and he was saying that before he started watching this year, he really didn't have any idea of what Meiser Sheni was. Now he remembers this chart. This chart is stuck in his head, and he's a kohen. So I'm going to show it again. Why not? There's nothing to lose. If a person thought to himself, I want to give truma. I need to give truma. That's how you start out. You start out with blue. You give 2% to the kohen of all your crop. And by mistake, he said, what I'm giving right now is Meiser. But he really thought to himself he wants to give truma. And he's holding at the second level, and he's supposed to give 10%. And he thought to himself, this should be truma. Maybe it was enough. Maybe it was taka 10%. He wanted to give generous. He said, this is truma. He swore. He made a shvua. He's never going to go in nether. I'm not going to go into that house. I'm not going to go into that shul. He got really upset at the Rav. I'm never going to step foot into that place. But when he said a different shul. He thought about the shul that the Rav insulted him, but when he said it, it was another shul. He slipped. It doesn't say a name here, but Rashi says, anytime it's a big yisod in Shas, anytime there's a Mishnah without a name, it's Remeir. So, anonymous Mishnah, Remeir. So here it says Mufurish that Achiyu Piv V'Liboy Shava. It's Mamsh Nachal. I'm thinking about giving truma, and by mistake I said meiser. So what if you said? Now, dvarim shebelev enim dvarim. But when they soiser each other, then it's a problem. So you cannot take the words, and his mind doesn't matter at all, because dvarim shebelev enim, so it's zero. His words don't make a difference here, and his mind doesn't make any difference, because his mind never makes a difference. Fine. Just a short joke. This might be more of a yeshivish joke, and you have to really know the sugya to know this, to understand this joke. But basically, during the lockdown in Israel, a cop stops a guy, and he says, "Where are you going?" So he says, "I'm going to the pharmacy, and then I'm going to my friend." So he says, "You're lucky that I hold like a mayor. So I'm gonna let you off the hook." He says, "And I'm lucky that I hold like Reb Meir in the Havamina that says you don't need piv liboy shava. You don't really have to be truthful in what you say." Okay, fine. Shivish joke. It's okay, fine. Whoever said the joke learned this daf already, and everything's great. By the way, I just saw Uncle Phil, and for whatever reason, I didn't know about this tremendous. It's a big secret, but I'm going to let the Olam know. You know why? Because I saw it in Ar Merkaz. If Ar Merkaz is over 500 people that get it, so 500 people know, I'm allowed to say the secret. Uncle Phil had twin grandchildren, boys. That's amazing. So Uncle Phil, you should be zoicha to see a tremendous amount of nachas from them. They should grow up to be tremendous Jews, bali chesed, and oyavei Torah, and loimdei Torah. A lot of nachas. Huh? Grandpa Phil. Forget about Uncle Phil. Grandpa Phil. It's official. Okay. Zok the Heilige Gemara, v'kasaver me'eli v'shava. Fine. Now, where are we holding? Elo Amar Baya. So forget that. We're not talking about such a machlokes of Pivli L'Shav. Elo Baya, final pshat. Reisha de Omar Simin Rishon Lemulim v'Simin Sheni Af La'arelim. What's going on? Back to Kachim. I had to pull out this picture from Chulin. If it looks a little funny, because it is, this is a trachea, and this is an esophagus. When you shecht an animal, you have to go through the two of them, the two simanim. These are called simanim. When we were learning Chulin, I had an air conditioner pipe from Israel, you know, the one that the water drips out of. That's what a trachea looks like. It has those indentations, those little, I don't know if you could see it here so well, but whatever. So this is the trachea. This is the esophagus. This is what you breathe from. He has to go through and through. So what's going on? As he's going through and through, he's thinking to himself, this one, the Amar Siman Rishon Lemulim. As he's going through this one, okay, this is for the people that did a bris milah. Going through this is the taivas, the gashmias, the esophagus, the food. This is Siman Shein. This is for people that don't have a bris. Even for people that don't have a bris. The Siman Sheini Nami Psichi Bei Mulim. Psichi in Hebrew is a nutcase. Not in this. Maybe it comes from this lashon. There's mixed in here people that have bris milah. This is only for bris milah. This is for people that also have bris milah, but also people that don't. Seifa the Omar Siman Rishon La'arelim Siman Sheni Lemulim. The Seifa is the opposite. The first siman is for arelim. Second siman for mulim. The siman rishon halei psichi bei mulim. The first siman, we didn't have any kosher people involved. So the safe is that when he started this shechita right from this direction, and he's thinking to himself arelim and mulim. So throughout the siman, there was nobody kosher in there. So the first part was where there was kosher on both simanim. The second siman had a few psulim, that's okay. The second part is that the one siman didn't have any kosher people to it. Oh, Geshmaki Yisod, it sounds very scary, but it's not. So here's the Yisod. Let's take this idea. I'm going to my bag. A guy brings a mincha, says Rashi. And the mincha consists of flour. He goes like this into the flour with his hand. He grabs a bunch of kmitza of flour and puts it aside. Then he has the frankincense. So he has two things. And he brings them to the mizbeach. He has to be makter this. He has to put it on the mizbeach. So if he thinks about a thought during this, both of these are giving him a kapara. The matter Now you could eat the mincha, right? Before you put this on the mizbeach, you can't eat anything. You have all these lachmei toida, let's say, 40 lachamim that we're going to talk about. You put it on the mizbeach, great. So what happens if on one of the two, he thought a thought, he thought a pigul. I'm going to eat my toida, my breads for a month. It's pigul. He ruined the breads. But does he have to have the thought on both of them? Or one of them is enough? Mifaglim bechati mater. Half. One half is enough. So if when it comes to flour and frankincense, a half is enough, so when it comes to this, it's also enough. So I could be mefagel, I could ruin it by thinking half of the siman, half of the two simanim. So I'll do one siman, called the trachea, with the thought of arelim only, bam, it becomes possible. If you hold like chachamim that a mefaglim b'chatzi matir, you can't do halfway. You need to be mefagel through and through. Your bad thought of pigul that I'm going to eat it outside of its allotted time has to be in both simanim. Then you wouldn't be over here. It wouldn't pass. But Remeir holds that chatzi is enough. So we just said, according to the second part, he thought about a person that doesn't have a bris milah. His brothers died, whatever the reason is. So he ruined it. He made pigul on half. And Rabbanan say no. You need to go through and through. All right, brand new Mishnah, Rabbi Yisai. The official Mishnah is sponsored by Leon Welcher in honor of the young couple and in honor and a schus for Psuras Toivus. Says the Mishnah, HaShoichet es HaPesach ala chometz. So it says like this. As we're going to see. Loi sishchat al chometz. What do you think about the new font here, Gary? You like? Loi sishchat al chometz dam zivchi. It has a red shade. You don't like it? Okay. To me it looked good. I don't know how it looks on the screen. Loi sishchat al chometz dam zivchi v'lo yolin la boiker zev chag ha-pesach. Loi sishchat al chometz. What does this mean? Now, when we were reading the parsha, was anybody excited like me? Oh, we just learned this passing meant that. Oral neichar gewaldig. Fine. We didn't get here yet. You're not allowed to shecht al chometz. Al chometz. What does that mean, al chometz? If you have chometz in your possession, it's asur issa deraisa to shecht the chag ha-pesach. So we have to remember when Mashiach comes this year, we have to get rid of all the chometz. We're going to get rid of all the chometz anyway. What about the Isser Bal Yirah? Okay, another problem. Some people say you're Oiva Bal Yirah, even though Pesach didn't come in yet. It's after the 6 hours. We're talking about Erev Pesach. I'm shechting Erev Pesach. It's not Pesach yet. You have chametz in your closet that you didn't give to the guy yet. You're over on this pasuk. Leisishchat al chametz. Says the Gemara. It says the Mishnah. Over b'leisas. Rabbi Yehuda Omer afatomid. Unbelievable. It doesn't say in the pasuk that we're going to see in the Gemara. L'sishchat, don't shecht anything. Even the carbon tamid, forget about the Pesach, carbon Pesach. Any carbon that you shecht, Erev Pesach, when you are in the possession of chametz, you're over, not every tamid. Afa tamid. Talking about the second tamid, right? Tamid ben Arbaim, Erev Pesach. Reb Shimon Omer. A third shita. Ha-Pesach ba'arba asar, if you shecht the Pesach when you have chametz, but it's Erev Pesach, lishmoi chayav. If you shecht, and you say, I'm shechting a korban Pesach, okay, you're chayav. Ushaloi lishmoi patur. Says Rashi, Reb Shimon is l'shitase in Kachim, and he brings a bunch of mekayers for it, that a shchita that's not ra'ui is not considered a shchita. So if I take a korban Pesach, and I say to myself, it's not a korban Pesach, it's a shlamim, so that's loy lishma. What happens on a loy lishma korban Pesach? You ruin it completely, toss it out. I'm not over on this loy sishchat, because I didn't do a shchita. Reb Shimon says, only if you do a shchita. But ruining a korban Pesach by thinking that it's a shlamim is not a shchita. It's like taking a gun and shooting the animal in the head. That's not a shchita. If it's a shchita that you're yaitze, then you're over. Ushar kol hazvachim. And if you take other korbanos on Erev Pesach, bein lishman, bein shaloi lishman potter, you potter. Ubemoyed, but if you do it on after the 14th, on Yontif, I can't bring a Korban Pesach any longer. L'shmoi potter. Why am I potter if I do it for a Korban Pesach? Because it's too late. So it's not a good Korban Pesach. Not a good Korban Pesach, says Reb Shimon, is not a shchita. Not a shchita, you're not over on l'sishchat al chometz. Shaloi l'shmoi. But if I flip my Korban Pesach to a shlamim, which we said many times you're allowed to do, and it's already the 15th of Nisan, I can't bring a Korban Pesach anymore, so I flip it into a shlamim, then it's a good shchita, then even though it's already Pesach, I'm over on the sishchat al chometz. Now you're talking about on Yontif. Because all other korbanos, it doesn't matter if you don't have lishma. If I bring a Korban Taida, and think to myself that's a oila, what's the halacha? The first Mishnah in Zvachim, and that's how we started off the Masechta, tells us that it's a good korban. It's just not good for you. You're going to have to bring another Taida. But it's a good, you continue doing whatever you need to do, take the blood, sprinkle, da. So it's a good shchita. Good shchita, you're over on l'sishchat al chametz. The only two korbanos in Masechta Zvachim, the first Mishnah in Kachim, that if you have the wrong thought, it's possible, is a Korban Pesach and a Korban Chatas. Therefore says the Mishnah, Chutz min ha-chatas, sheshachtai shaloi lishma. Korban Pesach we dealt with already. But the second korban called the chatas, if you don't do a chatas lishma, you say this chatas is a taida, bye-bye. Throw it out immediately. And memela, if you have to throw it out, then it's not a good shchita. If it's not a good shchita, you're not over, unless it's shchat al chametz. Says the Gemara, Reb Shimon ben Lakish, Rabbi Say, call your friends, call your wives. I am going to give you a big secret soon on how to diet. No shaykhs to this Masechta, but it's Monsey Shabbos. I got to tell you a story. Oh, Reb Shimon ben Lakish. Says Reb Shlokish, and this is how we paskin. Who has the chametz? Who owns chametz? The chametz is owned either by the shaychet, the guy that does the actual shchita, or the guy that does the zrika. We're turning to Daf Yomi Amud Beis, sponsored by Gedalia Fencer L'Refuah Shleima V'Yirach Mil Daniel Ben Tova Basha. Oy le'echad mibnei chabura. So anybody part of the group. You have a group of 700 people. It's too much because not each one will have a kazayis. You have a group of 10 people, and one shlemazel has chametz in his house. Well, if everybody knows about it, everybody's over. Everybody's over if one guy has chametz. Okay. That's Shitas Rashi. If they know about it, everybody's chayav. The chametz must be with him in the azor. He has to have a sandwich. They're all looking at him. Why do you have a sandwich? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? They're yelling at him, but they know about it, and they see the sandwich. They're all over. Rebbe says, why? He has to schlep the sandwich with him for you to be over. It says, al chametz, even if it's sitting in my kitchen refrigerator somewhere on the top shelf, and nobody, I'm still over. But my komifli, where's the machlokes? Oh, so look at this. I do all the work for you. You don't even have to look in Rashi, but even Rashi doesn't bring you this pasuk. It says in Bamidbar Perik Beis, Degel Machne Ephraim, and then 2 psukim later it says, after you know where Ephraim's camp is, it says Ve'olav Mate Menashe. Olav. The camp of Menashe is on top of Ephraim. They lay on top, they squish them? No. Olav means next to. So now we know that the word al means next to. Menashe is next to Ephraim. V'olav mate Menashe. Okay. So here's a shaylo. Does the word al indeed mean next to? Everywhere? Or only over there, by Mate Ephraim? The Rish Lakish al b'samach. Rish Lakish says it means next to. So when the Torah says right over here, Lo sishchat al chametz, means don't do shchita when I'm next to my sandwich. It's not good that the sandwich is at home. The sandwich needs to be in your pocket while I'm doing shchita in the azara. Not true. The word al doesn't mean next to. Al means on top of. Says the Gemara, if that's the machlokes, we already had this machlokes. A guy brings a carbon taida. Why does he bring a carbon taida? Something beautiful happened to him. He was saved. A tremendous nace happened to him. He was saved from a machla. Whatever it was. He came out of jail. All these people, they're just pardoned from Trump. They have to bring a carbon taida. They don't, so they say a shtickle. Today's mamish shmach. You go into the shul in front of 10 people. Goimel. A woman gives birth. Taida. So he goes and he brings the taida. Now the carbon is one thing, all the breads, the 40 breads. So here's how it works. He brings the breads. The breads have kedushas damim only. Kedushas damim is a very weak kedusha. I can redeem it, etc. But once I bring my carbon taida, all of a sudden all my breads jump up in status. They become kedushas haguf. Kedushas haguf, just as I see it in Rashi, so you might as well throw it out there. Why not? We made the picture back in the day. A tful yoim, when it comes to truma or kachim, is still tamei. In other words, a guy is tamei, goes to the mikvah, but if he touches those breads, they become tamei. He's not tar to the point that he's completely tar. That's another example of what a tful yoim is. A mechusik kippurim also, the next day he has to bring a carbon. They have tumah, a little bit of tumah. They could pass kachim. Okay. So here's the shaila. What if my breads are not next to my carbon? In other words, they're far away. They're at home. They are outside of the Azara. They're outside of Yerushalayim. What's the halacha? Do they have to be next to or not? So here's the same shaila. Does al mean next to? Al doesn't mean next to. It's not a shaila. If the breads are outside of the wall, then they don't become kedushas hagov. What does it mean? In other words, the furthest place in Yerushalayim, outside of Yerushalayim. Where's the Azara? Why not? Today, it's Motzei Shabbos. Here's the Azara, right over here. So if the breads are right past the wall, they're on Har HaBayis, just outside of the Azara, they're Kaddish. They don't have to be next to. Reb Shlakish says, no, if they are over here, no good. Amud Beis al besamuch. The Reb Shlakish holds. So here we have the machlokes. So what are you telling me? The machlokes in our sugi is the same exact machlokes like by Lechem? Doesn't make sense that Reb Shlakish and Reb Yochanan would argue about the same exact thing twice. They already argued about is al next to or on top. Elo basra savikom ifligim. Another yesod, another idea. We have it many times in Shas. In order to receive Malchus, you need that the Eidim should give you Asra. They warn you, hey, if you do this and this, you are going to be punished. If you don't have Asra, you don't get punished. What if they punish you and they don't know what they're talking about? In other words, they're not sure. They say, if you shecht and you have chametz, you're going to be over alav. You're going to get Malchus. Well, how do you know if I have chametz? Well, if you have a sandwich on you, so they could say, don't do it, you're going to get Malchus. But if your sandwich is at home, they have no right to say that. Unless they were at home and they saw it mefurish with their own eyes. But how do they have the right to give you a hasra when they don't know it's flying? So that's exactly machlokes here. Well, it's an old machlokes. Again, why do we need them to argue over here? Didma. I'm giving you a shvuah. I'm making a shvuah that I'm going to eat this bread today. And the day went by and he didn't eat it. Rabbi Yochanan v'Shlokish, the Amrit Arvayu ein aloika. If I swear I am going to eat this loaf of bread, I swear, and the day went by and he didn't eat it, you don't get Malchus. Rabbi Yochanan Omer ein aloika, but they say it for two different reasons. Rabbi Yochanan Omer ein aloika mishum dehavalei lav shem b'maisa. Not eating a loaf of bread is not an action that you could get something on. If you say, I won't eat this bread, and you do eat it, that's a maisa. You ate, you chewed. But if you say, I will eat it, and you don't eat it, so you didn't take action, you just slept in bed. For sleeping in bed, you don't get Malchus. That's what Rabbi Yochanan holds. That's Rabbi Yochanan, which Shlokish argues. Aval hasra safek, shma hasra. The problem is not because I, as an aid, as a witness, and I'm telling you, you better eat that bread. And if you don't, you're going to get. It's because I didn't know that you are going or not going to eat it, and therefore my hasra is not a good hasra. That's not the reason. Okay, so they argue about this concept. Rish Lakish, Rish Lakish Amar, like. In this case, where a person swears that he's going to eat the bread and he did not eat the bread, he doesn't get malchus for the other reason. That is the example of asra safek when I don't know what I'm talking about and I'm telling you, you better eat the bread, but I don't know if you are or not going to eat the bread, and therefore that's considered a safek in the asra, and that's why you don't get malchus. It's not true. The fact is that if I refrain from doing a neder that I took up, a shvur that I said I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and I don't do it, says Rish Lakish, you do get malchus on that. The only reason you don't get malchus is because that's safek, not because it's a lav shein b'maisa, because you didn't take action. Not taking action is not a reason not to get malchus. So over here, I want to take a pause for a second and tell you an achievement that I accomplished. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because I feel that, first of all, when I shared about real estate, a lot of people wrote to me that they appreciate it, they want to hear other advice as well. But this is a life and death piece of advice. What happened was, 38 days ago, I went for a blood test because I want to get Israeli insurance. And the blood test came back and it said that I have very, very high cholesterol. So I got scared. I said, I got to live, I want to live. And this happened to me a few years ago, and I went on a diet then, and I knocked down the numbers. I figured I'm going to try this out by myself and try to knock down the numbers. Now, I don't have the numbers yet because I didn't get another blood test. I really do need to get another, but I'll let you know about the numbers. But I will tell you this, that I decided to go on a diet then and there. The highest weight that I was 219. I'm 6'2", and I weigh 219, which is not good. And we're talking about Corona and all this stuff. I haven't played ball in a year. And I'm sure a lot of people are going through what I'm going through. Sitting around, not doing much, gaining weight here and there. So that's why I'm sharing this with you. And I'm saying right now, I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything about diets. I'm just telling you what worked for me. So maybe it will work for you. So I decided to go on a diet. And my good friend Noam Fix told me about this intermittent fasting thing. Basically, you fast for a certain amount of hours, and you eat only during those hours you're allowed to eat. And he said, you lose a lot of weight, and you have to do exercise with me. So I did one session with him, and that was it. It was too much for me. Fine. So let me tell you about the intermittent diet. I fast for 18 hours. Why am I saying this now? Because shvua shoichal. I'm swearing that I'm going to eat. So what happened was I made sort of a shvua that I'm not going to eat. That's why this triggered the memory. And I said, okay, let me share with the oilam what happened. I was going to tell the oilam when I started and have a bunch of people do it with me. I said, let me try it out first on myself. Bottom line is, you want to hear bottom line? I lost 20 pounds. 20 pounds this Friday. Intermittent diet. But I was very strict. I'm a little crazy in general, so I went crazy on this diet. Kevin says that you are going to die, Eli, if you eat that piece of cake. You're going to die. You don't touch that cake, you have cholesterol. Don't touch, don't touch. And during davening, I walk back and forth. People look at me, they're Meshuggah. Yeah, I'm Meshuggah. I walk, I do exercise during davening. Why? I was matter to I didn't ask a Rav because I'm about to die. So if you're going to die, you're allowed to walk back and forth like a lion stuck in a cage. Back and forth. Dr. Epstein looks at me and says, what is going on with this guy? He's probably very nervous. Something's wrong with him. I don't know. But I go, walk. That's the only time I can do it. Fine. So what happened was I fast 18 hours, which I did anyways, basically, and only eat 6 hours. Here it is, Rabbi Yisai. So when you break your fast, don't eat nash. So I ate 1 cup of oatmeal with fruit and a lot of times a shake, some sort of strawberries, blueberries, whatever you like, but no sugar, none of the shtosem. Got rid of all the carbonated drinks and all the juices, just water. This is how I broke it. And then during these 6 hours, you can eat whatever you want, but typically this is all I ate. This filled me up. I had my carbs from the oatmeal, and then I had, Mamish Meshuggah. This is the first time in history that Daf Yomi, Magashir stops and talks about a diet. But I figured somebody else, I know that somebody else is going to go on this diet, and it's going to really save them. They're going to lose weight. I did it for 36 days. I only went on the treadmill 10 times, even though I tried to do more, but I didn't have time, ran out of time, 10 times. But I did a lot of walking, steps here and there and there. And then I did my favorite trick, which I really didn't need to use, because the trick of I'm going to die if you don't take care of your cholesterol was very strong. But this trick very much works. And other things, I promise that I will give $1,000 to tzedakah. Each person can do their own thing. Some people need to do 10,000. Some people $2 is also very scary for them. But to a place that I really don't like. So if you're a Satmar Chassid, you should think about the most Zionistic yeshiva in the world. And if you are a Zionist, you should think about Satmar or the guys in Ramah Bet. You want to mamish donate $1,000 to a place you cannot stand. That will get you. And no sugar drinks, 20 pounds, Baruch Hashem. The shaila is, am I going to keep to it? Am I going to stick to it? Are you going to die from this? Maybe. I'm not a doctor. I'm not taking a chrais. I'm just telling you what worked for me. And Shalom Yisrael. Now let's learn Torah. So, it's not good. It is good. If you did intermittent diet and you died from it and you're in the caver, you could write me an email. Otherwise, don't even bother sending your emails. I'm not interested in how it's very dangerous and so said it's terrible. Okay, fine. Send me whatever you want. I love emails anyways. It's geschmack stuff. But do send me the email. When you lose your 20 pounds in 35 days, send me that email. I would love to hear it. Now you're so light on your feet and you're able to learn the daf with such geschmack, much better than before. I love those emails. All right, so we'll wait a month to see what happens. Zog the Gemara, Amri. So indeed, the shaila is back to what we said before. Does the word al, here it goes, the chat, I see the chat lighting up. I don't see what they're saying, but I see one after another. Shalom alei. Oh my gosh. No sound, it says? Oh, that's it. Okay. Al, does al mean next to or not? And we asked the question. What was the question? Why are you saying another machlokes? We already spoke about this machlokes. Utzricha. No, okay, so we're going to do it tzrichusa, and we're going to go weiter. In other words, the two machlokes are very important. The one by lachmi toida, behind the fence, does it need to be next to you, not next to you? In our sugya. Utzricha. If the sandwich has to be next to you when you do the shechita in order to be over on this, that's the shayla. The reason why Rabbi Yochanan says you don't need to be next to the sandwich, doesn't have to be right next to you, mishum de isu, because the Torah says you're not allowed to own chametz. Who cares where the chametz is? The Torah said don't own chametz, you don't own chametz. Hey, you just did shechita somewhere else, so what if it's somewhere else? Does it have to be next to? In the shiloh, is the bread kaddish through my shechita of my carbon taida, like kaddish ala b'fnim? That only works if you're inside the azara. So we agreed to be in an al basamach that you have to be inside the Beis Hamikdash. The isa v'gavai kaddish. If you're inside the azara, great. Eloi kaddish. Why? Think about it. According to Rashi, Taisus doesn't like this pshat. If I have a golden kli and I put something inside the kli, I put my flour inside it, becomes kaddish. It's only because it's inside. So to over here, you have to be inside the azara. Fine. And if I would only say, so now the Gemara says the exact same thing, just reverse. The other shita. Over here, Reb Shimon Melakish says that when it comes to bread, you have to be inside the azar. But when it comes to chametz, Rish Lakish would be made to Rabbi Yochanan. They'll be in al b'samach. You don't need to be close. The isuru of chalecha the issa because chametz is the issa deraisa the own tzricha. Boy minei Rabbi Shaya Rabbi Ami. Ein leila shoyche veyesh lelechem b'nei chaburo. So Rashi says he didn't know the top of the Amud that Rish Lakish paskins that the shoychet, the chabura, the zayrek, they need to. He doesn't know. So he says, what if this chametz belonging to one of the people of the group is everybody over? It doesn't say chametzcha, it says chametz. In other words, it doesn't have to be the shoichet, anybody. So what if a guy that's not even part of the chabura and the chametz is right here? It's a funny lashon. Rashi says though the chametz is here with him in the azara, but he's not part of us. What? So just chametz in general? Floating around the azar is going to make me chayiv because it doesn't say chametz cha, it says chametz. That can't be. Look at the end of the pasuk. V'lo you're not allowed to be overnight. So these two are connected. Only the group cannot have lina. Lina means you can't leave the carbon pesach overnight. Everybody has to finish the carbon pesach to the last drop. You can't have a milli thing of meat hanging around. But only who's chayiv in that? The people that are part of the chabura. That random guy that's walking around the azar with the sandwich in his pocket has nothing to do with lina. Therefore, he has nothing to do with the beginning of the pasuk to be mechayiv me on the shechita when he has chametz. Amar Papa Hilkoch. Here's the picture of chaylev again. This is from the Imurim. This goes on the Mizbeach. So the Kohen, he's putting this on the Mizbeach. It's not only the Shechita and the Zrika, it's also putting something on the Mizbeach. Because this Kohen is not allowed to let this chaylev stick overnight, Memela, he's chayav. We have a right to Rapapa. That we had already. You shech the Pesach and you have chometz over. Ey Monsey. Bisman shuhu la shoichet we had already. Oy la zorich the guy that ziriga we had already. Oy la chabura chabura we had already. Hoya lechad b'seif ha'olam ein zakaloi. But a guy is somewhere, who knows where, that has nothing to do with us. Vechad ha'shoich vechad ha'zori vechad ha'maktir chayav. And over here it says maktir. What's maktir? This guy. Aval ha'moilek esoif. What's Malika? Here's a picture. This guy, maybe zoom in a little bit because it's kind of hard to see, I see. It's white on white. Malika, the Kohen takes with his thumb, a little, you go this way. Okay, fine. You don't have to move. He takes with his thumb, the nail, and he goes like this. There's a special way of holding it. In the picture you'll see, he grabs it from underneath the wings, and with this, he goes like this. That's Malika. Just happens to be, he takes the blood, he does azah, then he does mitzui, he squeezes it. Great. Now, Rashi points out, it's lav dafke malika. It means any kind of shechita. But if you remember, we said that the only time people really bring korbanos is b'chusar kippurim. That is, a guy that has to bring a korban on the 14th, and he already brought his korban Pesach. He's permitted, that he's the one guy that's permitted to bring his korban. And most of the people that bring that korban, it's a bird, not an animal, because they're poor. So therefore, it brings us an example of a person of doing Malika after on the Arbasa. In over below klum, Malika you're not over anything. Question. How could that be? We have a contradiction. If you shech the korban Pesach on when you have chometz, you over and loisase. Right? That's us. Rabbi says, even a carbon tamid. They said to him, why are you sticking in carbon tamid? This we had already. Who's over? The shoichet, the zorek, and anybody in the group. Even the person that shechs and sprinkles, and over here it says that the moilek is chayiv. A second ago we said the guy that does it with his finger is completely potter. Go like this. We had this before. He picks up a bunch of flour, right? When we're talking about this guy, the flour. That's not called shchita. That's called a kmitza. Hamakter is emurim, and here it says the exact opposite again. Another problem. Over here it says hamakter, the guy that does the chaylev. We said before is chayiv, just like a guy that does shchita. He's in the aktorah, he's chayiv. We have two contradictions here. Top of Samach Dal Amud Aleph. Kasha Melika Meliko. Kasha Aktorah Aktorah. On the one hand, it says Melika is nothing, a complete. You're allowed to do it Erev Pesach. When do you do Melika? When you Mechusar Kippur, whatever. But then it says Melika Yechayiv. Kasha Aktorah Aktorah. On the one hand, it says you put a piece of fat on the mizbeach when you own chametz, you're chayiv. And the second one says if you put a piece of fat when you own chametz, it's nothing. It's not shchita. It's being makter. Says the Gemara, "Utameich tikshilach higufa." Okay, how are you going to explain the actual brayso? The Ktani lo yamru ela bepesach bavad. It says mefurish. They only said this halacha by korban pesach. Is there? I never heard of a korban pesach out of a bird, Korban Pesach is a goat or a sheep. So what does moilik mean? It's another type of carbon. And you just told me that the only carbon that you're over is a Korban Pesach. So we have a little bit of a problem. Reb Shimon says the Gemara, the whole entire thing is going according to Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon in the Mishnah. Look at Reb Shimon in the Mishnah. Reb Shimon says, Reb Shimon Omer, ha-pesach bar ba'asar l'shmoi chayiv, v'shaloi l'shmoi pater. You have to have kavanah, it has to be a good shchita, says Reb Shimon. If you don't do a real shchita, it's a puzzle shchita, said it's not a real shchita, you're not over. Okay, says the Gemara, Melika melika loy kashi, kam bar ba'asar, kam b'chol l'shmoyed. Difference between the 14th and Chal Hamoed, v'idi, Reb Shimon he. Great, but it goes according to Reb Shimon. So it makes a lot of sense. If it's not a good shchita, then it's nothing. But if it's a good shchita, then you're over. Aktor, navilei kasha. Tanoi. Deike de makish aktor l'shchita. There's some that say that putting something on the mizbeach, putting this chaylev on the mizbeach equals shchita, and therefore you're over if you own chametz. And some say no. There's no connection. You're only over al loisishchat al chametz loisishchat. It's a shchita. This is not shchita. This is just putting on the mizbeach. You're not over if you own chametz. Have a wonderful evening. Have a good voch, a freilich voch, a mazlik voch, and I'll see you tomorrow in less than 11 hours. What is it, about an hour? Agut Voch. Oh, Tomer Levi. Shavua Tov. By the way, Rabbi Isai, Sunday morning has a special schus, but Motzei Shabbos we always see David Hochhazer. So it's a special zach. Reb David, what's out zach? Who? The what? Rav Weisfish, a very, very nice piece you put in the Ara Merkaz. Very nice piece. Shkoyach. What about your watch?
He's gone for a cup of water.
No, he's there. He's still there.
Oh, I didn't take off my thing.
There we go.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay, so let me repeat everything. I said, Aguta Voch to Reb David Hochhazer. He makes my Voch, my Motzei Shabbos shir. I love seeing him. And then I said to Reb Avram Weisfish, I said that it was a tremendous piece you put into Ara Merkaz. Loved it. Yishmaka Maisa with pictures. You see, you're learning. You're learning. This. And the picture of the Kvarim was great. It was great. Great Maisa. Huh?
The new lights you didn't show. The new lights.
Who's talking? I don't see your name.
Me.
Okay, the new lights. Hold on. We're going to show the new lights. 1 second.